Hello, everyone, and welcome to the surprise edition of Wine, Women, and Words. And with me tonight, out of her time out zone, is Michelle.
I'm back.
And she can talk with our guests, and she's so freaking happy right now.
It was very sad to have my be like texting away on my phone and waiting for Diana to read the question. And I mean, no, I know you were like, but you're talking, so multitasking.
And it's awkward because I realize how often we feed off of each other when it comes to interviews.
I
It was
know.
like I had a missing limb, and it wasn't just like the left one that you could probably do without for most of the time, because if you're right-handed, your non-dominant
It was
hand,
the
you could
right
do
one.
without. Yeah, it was you were my right-handed limb, and I couldn't function. It was awful. Don't do that to
Oh,
me again.
well, we'll figure. I'm on my phone right now, which I'm trying to keep it very steady. But so we figured out that at least if whatever is going on with my laptop, if that doesn't get sorted out, we at least have my phone.
hmm
So I won't be in
And
timeout anymore.
and joining us tonight, the wonderful guest that Michelle gets to interact with along with me is Melonie Johnson. So thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
And if you guys remember, Melonie joined us back in November, but we had to have her on again because we're 2 weeks away from her release.
Yep.
And it's so exciting. I've got my book on pre-order. And so you guys can go ahead and pre-order the book now too. And the first one that's coming out is Hot with the Scot.
Yes, getting hot with the
Getting
Scott.
hot with the Scot. Yes, I just hear hot with the Scot, and I'm like, okay.
Nothing else matters beyond those words.
That's right.
Exactly. And then refresh for those who didn't catch our show in November, you can go back and listen. But if you don't want to, Melonie, can you give a little bit of a brief detail on what the book's about?
Yeah, about the book. So, getting hot with the Scott is basically it's a group of the Sometimes in Love series. It's 5 friends, and they are on their whirlwind dream vacation in Europe. And the vacation is about to end, and they're in Scotland, the last leg of the vacation. And one of the girls, Cassie, she's kind of a workaholic. She's very driven, and she's promised herself, when I'm on vacation, I'm going to let loose. And the one thing she wants is a fantasy foreign fling. Saying you're going to have a foreign fling and actually following through on it are two different things. And so she kind of, all through this trip, hasn't really been able to follow through. But then she's here in Edinburgh, and she's in the castle at a whiskey tasting, gets herself lost, literally stumbles across a Scot in a kilt, and things happen from there.
And of course, I mean, whiskey has to be involved.
Of course, yes.
All
There's
sorts of
certain things that have to be involved if you're talking about a Scot. You've got to have whiskey. You've got to have the kilt.
Exactly. And I mean, whiskey is one of those alcohols that you have fun shenanigans with. I like me some whiskey when I'm not drinking wine.
See, I really can't handle it. So yeah, I would be the one that'd be like one sip, I'm like, okay, I'm done.
I don't think I've actually ever tried. I can't remember ever trying. Well, okay, Jameson. So I guess yeah, I have tried it.
Because you've been in my house at Jameson.
Yeah, but I don't think I've ever like tried sipping it. Like I know that's a drink that you have to like sip and enjoy and savor. Mine was probably more like knock it back and grimace for minutes.
Right, because your throat is burning and you're like.
Or the one time I tried to feed you absinthe, and it was just it got underneath Michelle's nose, and she just did this, the most adorable, mind you, the most adorable cringe pull back, like, oh no.
That's
there are some things that you can't come back from.
It is. I have this tendency when I drink absinthe where I like it. I hate it going down. I like that black licorice aftertaste.
Have you had Malort?
No.
Okay, well, if you ever come to if Michelle's in the Chicago area, she would know. If you like black licorice aftertaste, And then Malort is something you need to try.
Okay, I'll give that a try. I'm not a huge, because of absinthe, I'm not a huge black licorice fan anymore. Because I just associate with the absinthe, because you take the sip of absinthe and you think, oh my God, what am I doing to myself?
Yeah, it sounds about like Malort. Yeah.
And then you have this black licorice aftertaste, and you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I can have a little bit more. And then you go through this cycle all over again. So the next thing you know, you're seeing little green fairies.
Yeah. So I'll stick to wine and you know, my cocktails that start with the letter M. Those are all fine.
Yes, very much so. Though we did a couple weeks ago inadvertently, I don't know if it's necessarily invent, because I know there's cocktails around there, but we mixed my friend and I mixed whiskey and champagne, and it was delicious.
Ooh.
Right?
I might be down to try that.
I
mean, yeah, I know everybody's got real quiet.
Well, I'm trying to imagine it, and I mean, I don't know if it maybe. I'm sure it felt good.
Now, getting back to your books, because I mean, we could talk alcohol all night long. Very easy for me.
Yes. So after the whiskey tasting and so we have there's 3 books. There's 5 friends, so hopefully eventually there'll be 5 books in the series. But right now there's 3 books that are coming out back to back to back.
Yeah, so, I noticed that that's 1 month after the other.
Yeah, we're doing St. Martin's Press decided they wanted to do a triple release. So like kind of like the summer of Sometimes in Love, you know, this whole kind of summer reads, and you can binge and you can kind of dive into these books and dive into these friendships and just kind of like really get invested in the stories and the girls and kind of get them all at once. So there's not like you read one and have to wait 6 months. You know? So really April 30th is Getting Hot with the Scot. And then May 28th is Smitten by the Brit. And June 25th is Once Upon a Bad Boy. So
I can't wait to read them by my pool.
Pictures of you reading them by the pool. That would be awesome. Yeah.
Yes, I would totally
of poolside reading, because I don't have that.
You can live vicariously through me.
Yeah, my editor is actually taking a trip to Scotland in May, and so she promised to bring with the books and to take pictures all over Europe with them. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Best friend ever.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. She obviously enjoys Scotland because she loved the book. You know, that's why she wanted to buy the book. Yeah, so she's a sucker for a Scot in a kilt as well, and you know, all that stuff. So
of course, yeah. So now, when books release, it can be a very stressful time and a very exciting and intense emotional roller coaster for some authors, because you're going through, you know, from what I understand, is dealing with, you know, you're dealing with the press of everything coming out, any kind of little hiccups. You're getting all the reviews at the same time. And I know you're gearing up for it because the first one is releasing in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Pre-orders have already started, as I mentioned, and I will keep mentioning just to give you guys a hint if you haven't already, you know, stepped over to Amazon while you're listening.
Yeah, and you can actually pre-order it from Target or Walmart or Barnes & Noble or The Ripped Bodice. You can pre-order wherever you like, pretty much.
I just saw The Ripped Bodice this weekend. I saw the girls
know,
there.
that book festival looked amazing.
It is. Yes, next year you'll have to come out and come play. It is huge and wonderful. So how are you? You're going to have 3 releases back to back to back. Do you have a lot of wine stocked up?
So I have a bottle of wine. It's called Manuscript wine, and I remember buying this when I don't think I even had an agent yet when I bought it. And I'm like, when I have my book published, I am going to open this wine. So that's in the fridge now. And when the first book drops at the end of the month, I'm going to open the bottle of wine.
That is an awesome reward.
Yeah. I feel like, so I'm in a group of debut authors, everyone who is debuting with a traditional publisher in 2019. And so it's been interesting, and it's not just romance, it's all genres. So sci-fi and fantasy.
Ball?
Excuse me?
Is it the Debutante's Ball?
No, the debutante. Quite a few of the authors are in the debutantes ball.
Okay.
But this is like a whole. I think there's 200 of us.
Okay.
And so, like I said, so it runs the gamut of genres. But it's been fascinating because we're all in the exact same place on our publishing journey. Like this is our first book, and just kind of sharing, and anything from big press to small press, it just has to be traditionally published. And it's been very helpful to kind of like wade through all of those firsts, like the first trade reviews and the first Goodreads reviews, and you know, just kind of navigating all of that and having a place to be like, how did this happen for you, or what did you think we should expect to? And it doesn't matter how big of a deal. Like we have some authors in there who had huge 6-figure deals, and we've had authors in there who have had, it's like it's e-only and no upfront advance, and none of that matters when we're in that room together. There's nobody whose ego is too big. There's no question that's too small or too silly. So it's been a great place to kind of have a support system to navigate this crazy, wild, exciting time. And we get to talk about like the excitement of building up to release. And then a lot of authors do talk about that kind of like emotional, it's like coming home from vacation. You know, there's been all this anticipation and you've been so excited, and then you do it and then it's over. And so there have been some authors who have been able to kind of work through those feelings of, well, what happens now after release? And so seeing other authors go through it before it's your turn, you kind of can like, okay. And they have great suggestions for, here's what I did to help me on release day. Here's what I did to help me stay busy or stay, out of my own head in the weeks after release day. And it'll be interesting because I think I'm the only one who has this kind of like back to back. There's I think 1 or 2 others who do have books coming out, but they're like the more traditional 6 months later kind of situations. But the nice thing is, like, all the promo efforts that I'm doing right now, I feel like will build on top of each other, because it's not like I'm going to do this big promo blast and then we have some sales and then boom, it's 6 months until you see me again. It's hopefully will build one on top of the other. So
absolutely, yeah. When you have that really good solid platform behind you as a writer, I think that really helps build for your books in general for when that launch comes. Yeah.
The indie market talks about how, you don't even, a lot of times they recommend not even putting a lot of time or energy into marketing until your 3rd book is out, because then you have that backlist to kind of build off of. So we'll see. It's kind of all, I feel like I'm a bit of an experiment for St. Martin's.
Yeah, it is, because I haven't heard of a series of books releasing so fast.
Some have done it before, like Joanna Shoup, who writes historical romance.
Okay.
We're friends through like the Golden Heart finalists all have a network, and so we're friends through there. And she said her first historicals came out like that. Back to back to back, and she felt it was a very positive thing. So I'm going to hope that that's true.
There's something that to be said for being able to be the guinea pig, because then if it works well, St. Martin's can hold you up and be like, "Hey, this worked well. This is our golden star."
And it just everything right now in general, because contemporary romance is kind of an odd animal at this moment. Like, it's kind of in a transition phase where you see so many of the new contemporary romances in trade paperback with the cartoon cover that looks more like The Word We Shall Not Say, that sounds like chick lit, and the more traditional mass market paperback romances are almost always one of 2 things. They're going to be small town or cowboy. Or small town cowboy. And mine are none of those things. So it's kind of an interesting place to exist in that space, but I kind of like it. I'm kind of hoping, like, someone like me, a reader who walks into a store and wants to grab a romance novel off the shelf, and doesn't want small town or cowboy, will be like, oh, Girls on Vacation in Europe. It sounds like something I'd like to read.
Right. So. I mean, I love Europe and I love anything with travel. So I'm like, I'm in. I'm totally in.
Yeah.
And Michelle, I feel like even though we're having you back in the guest area, I feel like I've been dominating the questions.
Well, I when you were talking about the group that you're in of all the debut authors and handling all the emotional buildup to your publishing date, it just reminded me of the episode of Friends after Monica and Chandler get married and they go to check out of the hotel and she's like, "That's right, I'm not a bride. I'll never be a bride ever again. Now I'm just someone's wife."
Right, you won't be a debut. I mean, you get to be a debut author one time, and so that does feel like, yeah, like once like that the rush of being new wears off.
And you get that sophomore slump out of the way too. This also brilliant. Cause I'm
what I mean, so a lot of people talk about the second book being a hard book to write. For me, it was the third book was very hard to write. And what I did get that I'm very grateful for is that I was able to write these 3 books without the outside world coming in. Like they weren't out yet. So I had nobody else's opinions on these stories except for my editor, so it wasn't like anything anyone has to say about the books wasn't able to infiltrate how I treated these stories. So that was good.
And that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. Yes, fine.
We had Shannon on the show a few months ago, and she has been writing the Devabad trilogy. So she's written books 1 and 2, and she's working on book 3. And she kind of said something similar to where, she tries not to read she tries not to read a lot of the reviews because, fandoms have very strong feelings, especially where love triangles are involved or subplots for where you have teams, team A versus team B of who people think the character should end up with. And she said kind of the same thing. She doesn't want to read a lot of reviews because she doesn't want that to influence, her writing, especially because she knows already, So
right. And even if you think it's not going to, I don't think it's possible for it not to in some way. Or, or even if you don't give into it, you're spending time thinking about it, and it will affect, it will affect the writing, definitely. So, but I mean, it could be a good thing too. It could be. So it was interesting because, they say don't read your reviews, but I mean, I don't know very many authors who can resist. And one of the things that's been popping up that I found interesting is comments on some of the side characters. And like, when is, Tabitha, who's the sister of the hero in book 2, when is Tabitha getting her story? I'm like, oh, like, something I didn't even think about. And so I think it's cool when readers can connect to not the main character, and feel something for those other characters. I feel like it means they're invested in the world. And so that was exciting, but that also kind of paints my, thought process on the whole story. And maybe I wasn't, so now Tabitha may be getting a novella. But so it's and like, again, like that whole, all of that, like navigating, I'm an actress, so I've dealt with plenty of criticism before, but dealing with criticism on your writing is a whole different thing.
It is. Yeah, it is. And for me, criticism on writing, and then criticism when it comes to like the podcast or anything you do in social media, because anytime you put something out there, there's going to be somebody who's going to criticize you.
Everybody has an opinion. Honestly, again, reviews are for the reader, and I know that. And so to stay outside of that space, so like I would never ever comment on a review or, step into that space because it's not my space. But that's also good to have, a support system where you can go cry And have people remind you that not everyone needs to love your books, and also to remind you that, you know, the greatest authors in the world have had bad reviews. You know, it happens to everyone. So kind of, you know, kind of level it all out and keep you from like just completely losing it.
Yeah, there's a couple philosophies that I like. I mean, the first one is Margaret Atwood said, if everybody loves your books, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then when it comes to Buddhism, one of the things that one of the head venerables had said when it came to criticism of anything that we do is that there could be something, try to find the one thing that you could possibly learn from it. And if there is a grain that you can learn from it, great. Go ahead and take that grain that you can learn from it, and then toss away any other negativity that may be associated with it. Like if if you're working with somebody and they're not getting, like, say, for example, in a work in progress kind of situation, not with something that's already published. But if you're like, for those out there who are writing, if you give something to somebody for critique and they're not understanding that paragraph, you know, it's not necessarily that they're not getting it, or it's not necessarily that you did it wrong, but you can look at that paragraph and say, okay, well, what is it about? How can I make this clearer? How can I make my plot clearer? How can I make the actions of this character clearer? It's just, you know, you can use the tools from it. And then, you know, there's always a philosophy: don't read the comments, don't read the
reviews. Stay far away.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time, and I've been very lucky. The trade reviews have all been very good. So that was amazing. You know, you feel like sometimes romance maybe gets looked at a little bit differently, and I don't think overall I've been very lucky, and excited about what's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like romance in and of itself as a genre is in this new renaissance.
Yes, it's in a place. Well, I mean, the genre itself and like the industry and the organization, there's a lot of growing pains happening right now, and for good reason, and good things are happening. And it's like bad stuff has happened to kind of speed up the process. So that's kind of good. Like, I mean, you know, sometimes you got to burn it all down to, you know, start fresh.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it is great to see the crop of amazing new books coming out that you may not have seen a few years prior. So I'm excited for that too. I'm excited to see the boundaries of what people consider to be a romance expanding.
Yeah, same. And I love the fact that they're covering modern issues in it, and it's not your grandma's book club. And not your grandma's romance anymore.
Who your grandma is.
That is true. I will give you that. I mean, the romance novels that I knew at seeing all the time were the Fabio covers.
Right. And again, and those had, you know, served a purpose in their day, and those were, you know, having to come at it from a certain way and kind of like opened up the door for the rest of us. So. And it is, you have to always look at those with a grain of salt when you read an older romance, the bodice rippers, you know, those kind of stories.
Yes.
You know, you have to remember where they came from. And obviously it's always interesting, you know, because, you know, I have romances I love that I read years and years ago, and do they stand up today? Most of them don't, but some of them do. So
it's like the 80s movies. On Twitter recently had a discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. What 80s movies have not stood up today? I mean, 16 Candles.
Nope. Yeah. I feel like Some Kind of Wonderful overall still stands up.
I think Pretty in Pink still stands. That was always my favorite of the John Hughes movies.
Was my favorite.
Hackers, wasn't that 80s or was that 90s?
I feel like Hackers was 90s. I love Hackers.
Yeah, I love Hackers. So maybe, okay, it doesn't quite fit, but it still stands. I mean, to date myself, I was in high school at the time, so that is technically old now, I guess, according to millennials.
It's classic.
Yes.
We're now We're now approaching vintage, so.
Yeah, seriously, guys, if you've not seen that and you want to see how us old folks learned how to work a computer, Hackers is great for that.
And the soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks. I mean, it really is so good.
Seriously, it is. It is a great soundtrack. But I think that's all. Unless, Michelle, do you have any other questions?
No, I just like being able to talk and hang out. But I've just pulled up while we were chatting on the laptop that does everything but let me listen. For Getting Hot with the Scott, so I can get my pre-order in.
Yay!
And get my. Can we even say spring reading, or is Chicago going to get a spring, or are we just going to jump?
In the 60s today, so all the snow from the weekend melted.
Well, it has like another 8-9 days to get its act together because I'm done with snow.
Yeah, well, we looked it up, and the latest snowfall ever on record was in June. So
nope. No, it is not going to snow on my birthday. I will move a year early.
It'll be a gift from the gods, Michelle. You can't kick a gift horse in the mouth.
I'm going to call it. I'm going to knock on wood while I say this, but I think we've had our last snowfall for the year.
And so. On Facebook memories, like it popped up from a year ago, and I guess maybe yesterday 1 year ago, I posted a screenshot of the weather forecast, and we actually did have snow.
We did have snow almost exactly a year ago. Yeah.
So I guess this isn't ridiculous that I mean, it is, but it's maybe not surprising. Should be the word. Because it is still ridiculous.
We have like there was somebody was speaking of things going around. Someone was putting around the internet the 16 seasons of Chicago, and it was like like full spring that happens with that one warm snap in February, and then like second winter, and like it was a very funny like listing of how we kind of go through this. It's spring, no, it's not, ha ha ha. And yeah,
and now we have the
pollinating.
Pollen.
Which we were close to, yes, the pollinating.
I can feel you. I can relate to you with the pollen stuff.
Yeah.
Good Lord. They actually did like a aerial shot over Los Angeles of the pollen. Like what the pollen looks like, as opposed to like the smog that we normally have. We have pollen now because we had rain, so much rain this season that all of our wildflowers bloomed, and there's just like pollen everywhere. It is just nobody's used to it. Everybody's having allergy issues.
Yeah.
North Carolina.
I am looking forward to sitting outside and drinking wine and reading books in warm weather. So.
Yes, same here. Especially Getting Hot with the Scott.
Yes, I expect to see you reading that by your pool.
Oh yes, I will. I will send you tons of pictures.
Reading. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure, and thank you for helping us out.
Yeah.
And everybody go pre-order your books now. Getting Hot with the Scott comes out April 30th. So thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.